we have one other report.
Yes, I would like to invite our Director of Special Education, Ms. Sheila Jerty, to present.
Afternoon, or good evening,
Good
Sheila.
evening.
Come on, don't make it earlier.
It's almost good morning.
Not quite.
And the board's report will start on page 24 of the
Thank
book.
you. Yeah, thank you.
Alrighty, well, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to come in and talk to you a little bit about our special education department. Tonight I will be focusing in on enrollment over the last 5 years, as well as staffing. I'll also touch upon our special education population, where our students are qualifying in, our service delivery model, academic growth, and finally our relationship with the cooperative, LaGrange Area Department of Special Education, and then go over just general recommendations. I tried to integrate as many of the questions that came my way in the last couple of days, so I hope I hit on everything. So as I said, I took a look at enrollment over the last 5 years. In general, the overall enrollment in the school has gone up approximately 80 students in the last 5 years.
Are we on 24 or 25, Sheila?
Oh, I'm sorry, I was going to hit on that later, but you
Okay.
want me to go through
No,
this
that's
first?
fine.
No,
No,
okay.
no. Go up.
All right.
Just tell
So
Mary Ann when you need to move back to
I'm on
something.
that page.
Okay.
I believe, yes. So our special education department has also increased over the last 5 years, about 35 students in total. When I looked at the information, the two areas that really popped out that impacted our enrollment were our transition program, and our transition program is our 18 to 22-year-old program, as well as our what we call our super seniors. So our super seniors are students who do have special needs. They have an IEP. They're staying with us past their 4th year in order to complete credits towards graduation. For one reason or another, they were unable to get all of those credits in the 4-year time frame. So as you can see, those numbers did grow over the last 5 years, and they're kind of bouncing around a little bit since in the last 4 years. Our transition students it really has increased quite a bit over the
I'm
last.
sorry. Which ones have bounced around the last 4 years? I'm looking at this and looking at
The super seniors, 7,
super seniors.
11,
Okay,
8,
the
9,
subgroup, because the overall trend is up.
Yeah,
So-
yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Super seniors are different than transitional?
Yes,
service?
they are. So
Super
they're
seniors need something to graduate.
yeah. So the transition students are students on IEPs. The IEP team meets once a year. In senior year, they'll start talking about, does this student require some transitional services as a result of the adverse effects of their disability? And they'll make a recommendation. One of the things that has come about, and this is not unique to RB, is it's a very broad definition of students that can qualify for these types of services. And I included that definition in my board packet. But the services include anything from continuing academic instruction that typically doesn't look like going into an English class. It's more academic supports for employment, or if a student is going to Triton, how can we support that student? It could be related services, it could be post-secondary education like Triton, vocational services, supported employment. So it's not just for a small group of individuals. In the past, transition services were focusing more on what we refer to as low incidence population. And when I say low incidence, I'm talking about those students that have disabilities that are less common, for example, vision or hearing impairments, cognitive impairments, multiple orthopedic impairments.
Can I ask, is there any state reimbursement that's associated with transition services?
We do get reimbursement for transition services. I would have to get back to you on exactly what that is.
I was just curious.
Yeah. Yes, we do. So that really accounts for, I feel like, our increase, because it's a pretty big increase in special education over time.
It's 2 years and quite an increase.
Yes, yes. Well, one of the things when I looked all the way back to get kind of more historic, and I mentioned in my board packet, in 2012, we were servicing 2 students in our transition program. Today, we're servicing 17. So we've been identifying more students with autism and servicing those students more across the whole educational realm. And I think that's what's happening. We're opening up transition to a broader range of students.
Okay, and I'm sorry if I'm just not following here, but you said you were servicing 17, I'm seeing 28.
Yes, 17 of those 28 students. So the other students fall into learning disabilities,
Okay.
other disability areas. But primarily, we have a big chunk of our students that fall under autism. Next, I took a look at our alternatively placed students. So these are students who the team has recommended that they receive their services at a therapeutic day program or a residential program. And these numbers continue to rise as well. I think that one of the things that's really important is that this is a progression. They're not coming to RB and all of a sudden we're recommending 25 students to be outplaced. Currently, our population of 25 students, 17 of those students were placed by the middle school or the elementary school. And we took them in, and then we are responsible for that therapeutic day. I think it's also important for the board to understand that we do meet with all of our 8th grade families. And we sit in on those 8th grade IEP meetings, and we talk about placement options. One of the things about being a bigger school than what you have in our middle schools is that we can offer a lot more programming because we have a bigger population. So we don't automatically say, okay, you're in a therapeutic day school, that's where you're going to stay. We talk about all of the different programming options that we can offer students. And for example, last year we brought 2 kids back from a therapeutic. They were in therapeutic day in 8th grade. 9th grade they came to us and we programmed for them here and are programming for them right now. We also had 1 student who was in residential that exited the residential program at the end of his 8th grade year and subsequently came to us freshman year. So we are working on, and we're cognizant of the fact that we can offer some additional programming here that maybe the middle schools just can't.
Well, it's a positive thing. I mean, we want the kids to come to their home school, and that's
yes.
the whole objective is
Yes.
to have the kids with their peers and neighbors.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
Is it possible to get information on a breakdown of what the profiles of the students who are outplaced, like what
Absolutely.
they're outplaced,
Yes.
what their profile is? Because I'm just wondering if
Yeah.
we're able to try to keep even more of our students in-house.
Yes.
Like you were saying, to keep them with their peers, to keep them in their home school.
Yeah.
Like, is there enough with a similar profile that we could create a program we don't have?
Yes, and actually we're looking into that right now, and I was
Okay.
going to touch upon that a little bit later. But we have been in discussions with our cooperative. They also, LT is also part of our cooperative, and we've been talking with LT about they're having the same problems. They're not problems, but the increase in therapeutic day. And we do want our kids here because we think that we can provide the best education. It's just a matter of resources. So we are in discussions with LADSI and LT to look at possible programming for our students with emotional disabilities because that is by far our highest, rate of students being outplaced, I would say. I'd have to double check the numbers, but off the
Yeah,
top of my
that's what I
head, I
would
think
think.
that's pretty safe to say. So next, I'm going to move on to staffing. Our certified teachers have gone up about three FTE in the last 5 years. One of the things that we have been working on prior to me coming, but we've spent quite a bit of time working on our PRIDE program, and again, this is programming for students primarily with emotional disabilities, to really build capacity in the building. It is a resource level program, which means it's not an all-day program because we can't possibly teach every single we can't have one teacher possibly teach every single content area. And again, we're tweaking that. At one time, we had a LADSI teacher and a LADSI social worker, and what we found was that there was kind of a lack of consistency in what we wanted as a district and what LADSI could provide. So we moved and shuffled some of those services, and we took them over because we think that they're very important. The other aspect that we looked at was our school psychologists. We feel strongly that our psychologists have a wealth of information, and they're very diverse in the different services that they can offer. They are people that we look to for our data. They're great interventionists as far as general education students and special education students. They're problem solvers and they're leaders. So we did increase those, and that'll come up in my LADSI breakdown shortly. As far as our transition specialists, you may see that that's a little bit strange that we have remained consistent over the last 5 years in terms of our FTE and transition. But part of that is our supports that we're getting from our paraprofessionals. So when I came in, one of the things that I noticed was that we had a lot of paraprofessionals within the general education setting, and it was sort of like Johnny needs a paraprofessional, so we're going to assign one to him all day. And so that left us with resources that were being underutilized. I feel strongly, and research supports, that students become over-reliant on teaching assistants, and we want to encourage our kids to be independent. So I wanted to take a close look at that. Studies also show that it impacts pair relationships because what high school student wants to go hang out with a student who's sitting with an adult. So I really wanted to prioritize that. I worked really closely with my case managers on instituting what we refer to as a paraprofessional matrix. And that really breaks down, okay, what is the student schedule like? What are they doing period 1 through 7? And we ask 3 questions. One is, what is it that that student can do independently? Up from that, what can that student do if we provide the most appropriate accommodations and modifications within the learning environment? And finally, what is it that the student cannot do without the assistance of a person? And that really helped us to target where we needed our paraprofessional support. And it shifted us to provide that support to transition. Transition, there's a lot of pretty new, intensive things that our students are doing. They're going out into the community, and they need job coaches. They're going to Triton, they need assistance with transportation, as well as navigating the campus, finding out where the accommodations office is, and so forth. So although we didn't see the numbers go down, we kind of moved the resource to the appropriate place.
Can I just ask, transition students, are they here 5 days a week, like a full school day?
Not necessarily. So our program is always designed based on the student's needs. So we have some students that are working, maybe 20 hours a week. We have a student that was just recently hired by UPS, and he's on like a graveyard shift. And that really changed up his transition program because he's not going to get home from work at 9 o'clock in the morning, come right to school. So we're forever, kind of tweaking depending on what the kids need. Our more intensive students tend to be those students that are here 5 days a week. The more independent they are, we want them out in the community, we want them working, and we'll offer those supports to get them there. So it's not a one-size-fits-all for sure. So now I'm going to talk about the student population, and if you want to put up the pie chart, that might be a good visual. So we service just a number of different types of students here at Riverside Brookfield High School. And in looking at the pie chart, our primary group of students are specific learning disabilities, and we're almost at 40%. The majority of these students are usually identified before they come to us, because that's how response to intervention works. You do a lot of intervention when the kids are younger. If they respond and they need that service in order to be successful, they're probably going to be identified as a student with a learning disability. The next big group of students that we work with are students who qualify under other health impairment. And these are students that have a medical diagnosis that is impeding their performance within the learning environment. I think the best example are those students that might be identified with attention deficit disorder. And their attention is really impacting their ability to take in the information, be organized with their material, so on and so forth. Autism, as I said before, we're almost at 17% students who are identified with autism. And we have specialized programming for those students. And then finally, the population of students that are identified with emotional disabilities. And although this piece of the pie is small, this is a piece of the pie that takes up a lot of our time because a lot of those needs are apparent in the learning environment and have to be addressed in order to maintain a good learning environment for all students. The other areas I would consider more low incidence. As I said before, these are disabilities that don't come up as frequently. So I kind of, I'm not going to go through each and every one of those. Any questions on our population? So next is our service delivery, and I think one of the most important takeaways to this is that we do not run a one-size-fits-all program for our kids. We individualize all programming based on the students' needs, and we run co-taught classes in all content areas. And co-taught is just a general education classroom taught by a general education teacher and a special education teacher. The special education teacher has the student's IEP, is aware of all the accommodations and modifications. The two teachers really work together to plan ahead of time, so they're proactive with their instruction in order to meet the needs of the students. So depending on where a student qualifies, for example, you have a student with a specific learning disability in reading and writing, that student may only be in a co-taught English class, and the rest of the day they're just moving about the building as any other student would. We can also mix and match. We have some students who are in co-taught, and then we'll put them into a study skills class, and a study skills class falls under our self-contained programming. It's a smaller student to staff ratio. There is a curriculum. They focus a lot on executive functioning because that seems to be a problematic area for a lot of our students, but it also gives them an opportunity to have a special education teacher for a period a day to ask questions to work through homework, study for tests, and so forth. Our case managers will also help kind of bridge that relationship between the student and a gen ed teacher if that student doesn't know how to navigate advocating for themselves.
So what kind of co-teaching, I mean, you talked a little bit about co-teaching, but do we have a specific model that we use here?
So we don't just do one model. We do a host of different models, whether that's parallel co-teaching, where the teachers are kind of going back and forth together. We will do some small groups within the classroom. Our goal is to keep all of our students in the classroom and not be doing like pull out, because then you're restricting the program, and we can't just
Right.
restrict student programs.
And how do we know, like, are we collecting quantitative or qualitative data to see how effective the co-teaching is?
That's a great question, and that's something that in my recommendations I would like to look at that more. Right now we collect individual student data by progress monitoring, and that will include things like their progress specifically towards their measurable goals on their IEP, as well as their grades, attendance, any kind of referrals to the dean's office. So we're constantly looking at that, but I'd like to further delineate that in order to find out, you know, how effective our programming is. Some of our co-teaching sections are bigger than others, and that can impact, because the volume is going to impact, you know, how you can,
Right.
the intensity of the
Right.
services. you
And we
can
don't have a
provide.
lot of teacher turnover here, but are teachers getting continuing professional development on co-teaching? So if there's
We
a
have-
conference around, or, you know,
Sure, yeah.
going to see Paula Kluth, or...
Yeah, so we did do some co-teaching professional development a couple of years ago. If teachers request, we just had a couple of teachers go to a more of a behavioral type of conference, and then I asked them to come back and talk with our staff during PLC to share that. So there's opportunities for that for sure.
Okay, and then one more
Sure.
is, because I think I'm going to go to it in February, but is there, like, someone who does assistive tech with, you know, we're a one-to-one district, so
Sure.
there's a lot on the Chromebook, right, that can help
Yes.
them
Yes.
with their disabilities?
Yes, so that is a contracted service through our cooperative, and we use it, you know, when it's needed. We have a lot of tech-savvy individuals on our staff, and they have a lot of experience with different apps and so forth on Chrome. So I have definitely seen a decline in the need to access assistive technology.
From Lansing?
From LADSI, because we have so much at our fingertips. But when we have students that, you know, are more complex and we're struggling, we definitely call them in.
Okay, sorry, that was a lot.
So as far as our co-taught classes, they can run anywhere between 15 to 42% of special education students in those classes. And those are our content area co-taught classes. We do have our reading classes that run a little bit higher with special education at closer to 60%. Those are smaller classes, they're not content, they're interventions. So I don't think that that's a problem. I think we're getting good outcomes with our reading program, but that may look different when you look at the data, that those numbers are essentially higher.
So is that what, because I was going to ask, are the class sizes smaller in co-taught? Is that what you're saying? So like what, I should know this, but like
No.
what is our?
70-30.
Yeah.
No. Like how many kiddos can be in a reading content area class? What's the class size? What's it capped at? Kevin?
27.
27.
Yeah.
So in a co-taught class, is it also capped at 27?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
you're gonna have,
Because you have two teachers in there.
Yeah,
so
I'm just
the-
wondering.
the-
I'm just
the-
wondering.
The disparity will become as we do fill out the sheet, the preference is 70-30. the recommendation from the state, but they allow you to fill out a waiver. So we've had to fill out the waiver because of the expense that goes into co-teaching.
I was just
Right,
curious.
so 70-30 means 70% one telling the rest of the board.
Oh, sorry.
But classes,
Sorry, I forget you guys are.
right,
I'm writing this down
So
'cause I'm trying to
70% of the
figure out.
children do not have IEPs, and 30% of the children do
Yeah.
have IEPs.
That's the
But not 504s.
That's the recommendation.
That's the state
So it goes
recommendation.
up to that amount, it's not saying that,
We go, no,
You can
that's the
waiver-
recommendation, go past that amount.
okay,
Kind of like the rule, but you waiver it if you're above it.
okay.
You have to have a good reason, right? You can't just.
Sorry, I should have known that, I was
Right.
just curious.
So next, as far as academic growth, I think it's important when we're talking about benchmarks. Benchmarks are going to tell us and assess proficiencies over time. What we do more so in special education is progress monitoring. And we're getting assessments more frequently because we want to make sure our interventions are working, and those interventions those progress monitoring tools really go back to how are students doing on their goals and objectives, what are their grades like, how is their attendance, and any referrals. So that's what we really focus on. But we do also look at those high-stake tests, including the SAT. And I included a breakdown of how our students in special education performed over the last 3 years. Although they're low, I was happy to see that there was a increase in students meeting benchmark. We definitely need to work on this area. I also was able to do a little bit of a comparison after talking with Ms. Lindquist in terms of, for benchmark for English reading and writing, state was 56, national was 54. In 2018, the general education, 76% of students met, only 10% of our students met. In 2018, 76% of our students in the general ed met, only 10% of ours did. And then 73, and then 15. In math, state was at 40, national was at 33. Class of 18, 50% of the gen ed population met benchmark, and only 3% of the special education population. And that did increase in 2020. Gen ed was at 59% meeting, and special education met at 12. So we're going to continue to look at that and find ways to keep that growing. I think that the growth is really, it was a new assessment, but over time we're preparing our students. We're more familiar with the tests. We're also doing some interventions like the algebra-infused academic support and literacy coaching across the curriculum, which I'm hoping our special education students are benefiting from as well. Any questions on that? The last area I'm going to address before recommendations is just our services with LADSI. These are our purchase services. As you can see, we've had a lot of fluctuation over the last 5 years with our emotional disabilities teacher, social work, and behavior specialist. And I really think that this goes back to us tweaking some of our programming related to our PRIDE program and our social thinking program. I truly believe that we are at a really good place with both those programs and finally found the formula to pull it all together. I already kind of spoke to the school psychologist position, and we have increased that for various reasons, and I feel like the outcome has been very positive. One of the biggest areas that I see impacting our FTE is our nursing. We have students that require individual nursing services at this point, and that increases our FTE, as well as the mandate that we have to have a certified school nurse go to IEP meetings and do those evaluations, so we're contracting a little bit more for that as well. And then finally, the transportation piece.
I have a question. So
yeah.
is that the .2, because we have a nurse, Ms. Connolly, in-house.
Yes.
She's employed by RB.
She is, but she is not a certified school nurse.
Right, so is that what the .2 is from Lansing to go to the IEP meetings?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and do evaluations. So finally, transportation. Our costs are really impacted by our outplacements as well as our vocational and transition programs. One of the things that we've been working on with Kristen is to build capacity for our teachers to be able to drive our bus as well as our drivers on cars during the day. And we have a few more teachers that were recently, they got that certification. So I'm hoping that we won't be as reliant on Grand Prairie, and perhaps we can diminish the costs a little bit.
Sheila, back on that chart is, we were at 8.1 from purchase service. We're still at 8.1, but yet there seems to be a large increase from the 587 to 924.
Oh, of course, Kristen has to walk out of the room at this time, but it's the change in the grant. Previously, that grant was filtered through LADSI.
Okay.
And now that money is given directly to the district, and my understanding is we take it, we figure out the calculations, and we ship that money back to LADSI to start paying for our services.
Yeah,
Yeah, I remember her saying that.
Yeah. Yes.
So it's not necessarily the 8.1 almost doubled in cost.
Here she comes.
Yeah, yes. The difference between 2019 and 2020 is because of the grant, not filtering.
Okay. The idea grant.
Yes.
Yeah, I've got my own different formula.
She's almost out of gas, so she had to go get her charger.
All right.
Kristen, the question we were asking is the 300 and odd.
Page 27.
thousand, roughly 300 and change $1,000 of on page 27 from the 924 to 587.
FY 19 and 20, right?
The IDEA grant was approximately $270,000. So we receive it in revenue, and then we will see it as an expenditure as well. It's the first year that the IDEA grant has to flow through the district as opposed to special ed cooperatives. But it's approximately $270,000.
Okay.
Finally, general recommendations. So I would like to see us continue our dialogue with LADSI and LT about additional programming, primarily focusing on those students with emotional disabilities that we're really not able to service here at LT.
So are we going to see, like, are there going to be specific recommendations on this? Is there a time frame? I just want to understand. This seems like a great path to go down.
Well, right now we're in discussion, so we're not to a point where we're saying, okay, by August of 2020, we're going to have this, this, and this. We're really at the planning stages, kind of looking at the financial aspects of it, like what's it going to cost for a teacher, how many teachers, things like that, related services. So
this is
it's really
aspirational at this point.
Yes, it's beginning stages, but we are working diligently on that with Ellie at LADSI. So one of the questions that came my way was about an audit of the special education department and really looking at my duties. And as I looked at this, I would like to have more contact with our outplacements. Outplacements do take me out of the building, and with 25 students, that's a half day right off the bat, just to physically be in a meeting. That has, it doesn't account for the consultation with the staff at that school, the meeting prep, the IEP, all of those things. And in order to start bringing kids back, I really believe that we need to do this right and sink the time and energy into doing this. And I need to find the time to do that. I would also like to look at the programming models that we have in place and maybe get a little bit more data on how our students performing in the co-taught environment, how are our self-contained programs running. So I'd like to, form a committee to do that here with our case managers. Also looking at my administrative responsibilities here at RB with administrative team meetings, staff evaluation, supervision of paraprofessionals, LADSI coordination, and overseeing, the policy, procedure, and legal aspects of the special education department, while simultaneously building a really good program, communicating with my teachers, doing program problem solving as well as individual problem solving. So a question came up about what is individual problem solving. When we have students that are having ongoing issues and they're not being successful within the learning environment, we start to do individual problem solving. So we'll put them on the docket, we'll call in whatever team members need to be there and try to problem solve. Then we come back to the table in 6 weeks and see how they're progressing. So it all takes time, and communication is essential in the success of helping our students and building capacity. So those would be my recommendations moving forward.
I had one other question. How many, and I didn't have time to look on the state report card, but are we finding a lot of double identified kids, students who are coming to us with a strong bilingual designation still at this age, right? Maybe they're newcomers, and then also we're saying that they need special ed services as well?
Yes, absolutely. So we're working with Ms. Reeves on that, and we kind of talk about the different services that she would provide, the services that the student would get in special education, and figuring out, can we do both? Oftentimes we can't. There's just not enough time in the day. So what we do is usually we default to the special education services because they're so individualized, and then we'll just consult with EL as needed.
Okay.
They still have to take the access testing, and she takes that on. So yes, we are.
Okay. Yeah, 'cause
Do any
that's-
of our sped teachers have EL certifications? Is that anyway? I don't even know if it's applicable in high school. I mean, does that?
I don't know if Grace does. Grace Lee.
She might.
Grace does and Armando does as well.
And Armando,
they do.
yes, I'm
Okay.
sorry. Armando, yes.
That
So,
helps.
yeah, and we will strategically place students with Mr. Venegas as well, because he is bilingual. so
Back to
it's
this
helpful.
SAT thing. So those benchmarks are based on the entire special ed group, that is like 13.5% of the kids.
Yes, yes,
But only 15% of those are meeting the benchmarks.
yes, yes.
So are we, Kylie put together this pretty good tracking mechanism for tracking progress. Because that seems like those are probably lowering the scores of the whole school, 13%, right?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So I did take a look at what Kylie shared with the Board of Education, and I can, surely track that. We really only had one grade level at this point that took I believe the SAT 9 as well as on the SAT, so I couldn't do that comparison. But I can work with her to
Right,
develop
really
something
focus on it.
similar moving forward.
Yeah, do we have any trends like from the AC? I know we just switched over, but like from the ACT from before?
So I attempted to get the ACT for just our special education population, and it was the feed was a little much for our data person. So we did not delineate those students, as far as I know, for ACT. So I wasn't able to secure that information. But that gets done automatically with SAT.
Oh, okay.
It's not something that we need to
That's
calculate
extra
out.
here in-house?
No.
They have that on their report?
Yeah, and that's actually on the school report card, so anybody can see that.
So one of the things I wanted to talk about as we go into our, strategic planning, what do you see as some of the trends coming down the line? Because if we go to the finance page, we're, is it gonna keep more students? I mean, we know the
Yeah.
students in the feeder schools, right?
Yes.
Yes. I mean,
My understanding,
we know how many kids are coming, we can see the
Yes.
bubble, right?
Yes.
And so we plan
Yes.
FTEs, how do we plan?
Yes.
How do we adequately plan the
Yes.
resources?
so my understanding, in speaking with Ellie and some of the other directors at the feeder schools, is that we're seeing an increase in therapeutically placed students that are coming our way. So I think that's a trend that we need to address. And one of the things that we're doing is proactively, what can we do? Because I feel like at RB, we don't have our school is not so big that we can run a standalone, self-contained program for emotionally disabled students. We have a resource program, so typically schools will do a resource level program and then we'll do a self-contained model. We don't have capacity to do that, so our students are automatically going to a therapeutic placement and skipping that step. My hope is that we can get that step in place and work with LADSI on that. So that's one trend, or build capacity in our PRIDE program. I think our transition could potentially, I don't know if we're kind of at a plateau at this point, but that would be the other area that it could potentially grow.
I mean, we've raised, 5 years ago, we were spending $2 million, and now we're spending $4 million as a district. In 5 more years, if we need to carve out some money, we need to carve out the money. It's our students, right? And that's, I just worry about that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Any other questions for Sheila? Deanna, you're taking notes, you're just taking notes, we don't know.
Just taking notes, drawing
right.
pictures.
Just wanted to make sure, I didn't want to know if you,
Thank you.
I didn't know if you were taking notes that you wanted to ask us.
No, I did not,
Need any
thank you.
follow-up? Okay,
No,
anybody on
I
this
will
side?
circle back if I have follow-up.
Okay. Sheila, thank you very much. I would, the
Thank you.
so
Thank
much.
you.
Yes, we gotta start
Very
looking.
informative.
I had
Yeah.
took way too
SAT,
much time.
ACT data, we gotta start, that's a big trend that they want, we need to improve on. Okay? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks much.
Very interesting.
There's a lot of pieces of information.